International efforts to get North Korea to come to the table about its nuclear program and the threat it poses to the Korean Peninsula and beyond have intensified in recent weeks.
Let's turn our attention to another major shakeup at the White House now. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster is replaced by John Bolton, a former ambassador to the UN. This signals a further shift towards hardliners weeks before a U.S.-North Korea summit. Kwon Jang-ho gets us up to speed with the developments.
U.S. President Donald Trump once again announced a major White House reshuffle in a tweet on Thursday. Thanking H.R. McMaster for his service as National Security Advisor, Trump announced he was handing the role to former UN Ambassador John Bolton starting April 9th. The decision was hardly a surprise, as it had been widely known that McMaster did not always see eye to eye with the president. But the timing raises concerns, as the move comes with only 2 months to go until the highly anticipated U.S.-North Korea summit, which McMaster was heavily involved.
Well, you know, North Korea has a playbook of phrases that they use depending on what their propaganda strategy is. That's in the chapter on dovish phrases. The next chapter contains phrases like unleash a sea of fire across the Korean Peninsula. I think that their history over decades is that they, like Iran, like others, use negotiations to buy time to conceal their nuclear weapons and ballistic missile activity. So the meeting with President Trump, when it comes, I think will be a real opportunity to say, to see whether that's the same policy they're pursuing as they have so many times in the past. They've repeatedly committed to give up nuclear weapons, and they've repeatedly lied about it.
Now in comes Bolton, who has had several senior positions in Republican administrations since the Ronald Reagan era. But he became a household name during the George W. Bush administration as the UN envoy and a vociferous advocate of the Iraq War. His hawkish views have diminished little, as he has repeatedly expressed skepticism over talks with North Korea in recent weeks. And last month he wrote an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal offering a legal defense for carrying out a preemptive strike on the regime. Bolton, along with former CIA Director Mike Pompeo, who is taking over the post of Secretary of State, has markedly upped the Trump administration's hardline stance, leading to the conclusion that negotiations with Pyongyang are set to become even more difficult than they already were.
John Bolton, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN. How you doing, sir? And good day to you.
Glad to be with you.
So what to believe and what not to believe once you heard these headlines?
Look, the only thing North Korea is serious about is getting deliverable nuclear weapons, and by all accounts, they are very close to achieving an objective they've been after for 25 years. So why do they want to talk now? To divert our attention, to get us enmeshed yet again in negotiations, to get across that finish line. Look, we've talked to North Korea on and off, directly and indirectly, for 25 years. We have failed, obviously, to stop the program. There's no reason to think that with them a few yards away from the finish line in year 26, they're suddenly going to get serious. Indeed, I come to the opposite conclusion.
So you not only are you skeptic, but you don't believe this to be true. This appears to be true. They would not even be in this position without James Mattis and Rex Tillerson and Donald Trump. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think they have gotten to the point where they're worried that that this administration doesn't respond the way the Obama administration did for the last 8 years. But I think they see in South Korea an opportunity to try and drive a wedge between us and South Korea, or at least force us into these negotiations. And the real problem is not talking. If the administration continued to increase pressure on North Korea, that'd be one thing. But I will bet you $1, just as we're sitting here today, you're going to hear almost immediately the United States has to contribute to the atmosphere. We've got to show good faith. Let's prime the pump, all of which is code talk for make concessions. And if that comes, then I think you can count on this. North Korea will get deliverable nuclear weapons before the end of this year.
At the end of 2018. Maybe the economic squeeze is working. Maybe they're starting to feel that. I mean, possibly that's why you have a change in potential tone.
I don't think so. Look, do you think Iran is abiding by the sanctions on North Korea? I don't think so. I don't think the Russians are. I think the North Koreans are the world's best grifters. For example, do you know who paid for their participation in the Winter Olympics? South Korea. Great deal.
Maybe North Korea would expect something from the United States, like guarantee of its security and regime, and softening of its economic sanctions. But I think as John Bolton coming in, I think they would not accept all those kinds of proposals by North Korea.
Despite Bolton's calls for military action, experts widely agree that any strategy using military power is highly unlikely as of now. However, the fact that Trump chose Bolton to such a key post suggests that the potential of military options will likely remain on the president's mind.
Bolton has routinely suggested military options as a standard recourse for American diplomacy. Again, not just with North Korea, right, but with a lot of other places, particularly in the Middle East. The president had to know that John Bolton was a pretty controversial character. John Bolton's been around for 20 years and has been saying these sorts of things for a very long time. Yet the president still chose him anyway, which suggests that, he's at least vaguely listening to his advice.
As we have clearly said several times, our republic does not develop, produce, and stockpile chemical weapons, and opposes chemical weapons themselves.
Congressman Ted Yoho isn't buying it.
We have a suspect that they have over 5,000 tons of chemical weapons.
Yoho, chairman for the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific, tells VOA a similar attack by North Korea would not be tolerated.
We hope that the weapons that the Kim Jong-un regime is funneling to Syria are not used against people, because that's another wild card in this whole negotiations. That won't be just America saying we're going to bring an end to that. You're going to have the world coming up and say that's a red line.
Yoho urges President Trump to continue sanctions against North Korea, even as preparations for talks between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un has created a buzz in Washington. That optimism, however, has not led to an easing of international pressure against North Korea.
Will those in favor of the draft resolution please raise their hand?
The UN Security Council voted unanimously Wednesday to extend the mandates for the panel of experts monitoring sanctions against North Korea.
Through their expertise, as you say, we're able to see the ways in which the North Koreans try and evade sanctions and to systematically close those down one by one.
The panel claims Pyongyang has repeatedly skirted sanctions, sending contraband supplies to Syria that can be used to make chemical weapons. Syria's government has been accused of using such weapons against its citizens, including deadly chlorine gas in clashes in eastern Ghouta earlier this year. North Korea denies the allegation.